Welcome back to Global Current Lens, where headlines are decoded, strategies are exposed, and the truth about global events comes into focus. Explanation: in a world already tense with conflicts, alliances, and rivalries, one ultimatum has placed the Middle East back at the center of global attention. The former U.S. president has delivered what he calls a three-day ultimatum to Hamas: comply, negotiate, or face consequences. But what if Hamas says no? What if the group rejects the warning, refuses to compromise, and tests the boundaries of American pressure? This is not just another political statement or soundbite explanation. It is a loaded move with ripple effects that could touch not only Gaza and Israel, but the entire balance of power in the Middle East and beyond. Explanation: to truly understand the weight of this moment, we must go deeper than the headlines into history, geopolitics, economics, and the competing strategies that are shaping the present. Quick context snapshot: at the heart of the crisis is Gaza, a narrow, densely populated strip of land wedged between Israel and Egypt, controlled by Hamas since 2007. It has long been a flashpoint, not just in Israeli-Palestinian relations, but in global politics. Over the years, Gaza has endured wars, blockades, and humanitarian crises, each cycle seeming to reinforce the stalemate rather than break it. Now, the ultimatum issued is short and sharp: 3 days to respond. To some, it sounds like a deadline pulled from a Hollywood script. To others, it represents the harsh reality of power politics, timelines, leverage, and consequences. Hamas' explanation, a militant political movement, has been resistant to outside pressure, often portraying itself as the defender of Palestinian resistance. Whether it views this ultimatum as a threat to be defied or an opportunity to exploit remains to be seen. And so, the question hangs heavy: if Hamas rejects this ultimatum, what comes next? The immediate event, the immediate development is the ultimatum itself, a bold, time-stamped demand that places all eyes on Gaza. 3 days is not much time in the world of international diplomacy. Typically, negotiations stretch out over weeks, even months. Here, the clock is ticking fast. The message from the former U.S. president is blunt: Hamas must step back from its current course or face severe consequences. The wording is ambiguous, leaving room for speculation about what those consequences could be: military strikes, economic isolation, expanded support for Israel's operations, or perhaps a combination of all three. Israel, for its part, has been clear about its intentions. It views Hamas not as a political entity, but as a terrorist organization responsible for rocket attacks, kidnappings, and waves of violence against its citizens. Explanation: for Israel, an ultimatum backed by Washington is a green light to increase pressure. For Hamas, it may be an invitation to dig in further, framing itself as the unyielding defender of Palestinian rights against foreign and regional adversaries. In the streets of Gaza, the ultimatum lands in a climate of exhaustion. Families already enduring shortages of food, medicine, and electricity may look at another escalation as unbearable. Yet, within Hamas's leadership, survival has always meant defiance. Saying yes would risk looking weak. Saying no would risk triggering devastation. Explanation: this tension defines the moment. The world watches, counting the hours. Historical and political context: to understand why this ultimatum is so charged, we must step back. Gaza is not just a strip of land, it is a symbol. Since Israel's withdrawal in 2005 and Hamas's takeover in 2007, Gaza has been both a political laboratory and a battlefield. The international community has tried multiple formulas: negotiations, sanctions, aid packages, ceasefires. None has resolved the core disputes. Hamas, born out of the first intifada in the late 1980s, is more than a militant group. It's a political force with deep roots in Palestinian society. It blends religious ideology, social services, and armed resistance. Explanation: while some Palestinians see Hamas as defenders against occupation, view them as an obstacle to peace, prioritizing ideology over survival. Strategy has oscillated between containment and confrontation. Periodic wars in 2008, 2012, 2014 and have inflicted destruction but never eliminated Hamas. Ceasefires mediated by Egypt, Qatar, and the United Nations have produced fragile calm. Explanation: only to collapse under the weight of mistrust. The United States has historically stood by Israel, but approaches differ depending on who occupies the White House. Deadlines, ultimatums, and tough rhetoric are tools sometimes used to project strength. Yet they also risk igniting conflicts rather than resolving them. The political stakes extend beyond Gaza. Regional players like Egypt and Jordan fear instability spilling across their borders. Iran sees Hamas as part of a broader axis of resistance linking Gaza to Hezbollah in Lebanon and other proxy groups. Gulf states, some of which have normalized relations with Israel, tread carefully, balancing support for Palestinians with new diplomatic ties to Tel Aviv. In short, Gaza is not just Gaza, it is the meeting point of history, religion, nationalism, and global strategy. The ultimatum arrives in this combustible context. Explanation: global reactions. The ultimatum is not happening in isolation. Across the world, governments, analysts, and citizens are reacting in real time. In Washington, move is polarizing. Supporters of hardline policies against Hamas welcome the pressure. Critics argue that deadlines only escalate tensions, explanation, leaving no room for diplomacy. The State Department, Congress, and think tanks are divided, reflecting America's broader struggle over how to engage with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. In Europe, reactions are mixed but cautious. The European Union, long a proponent of dialogue and humanitarian aid, fears another war that would worsen Gaza's humanitarian crisis and fuel refugee flows. European leaders quietly urge restraint, mindful of how easily violence in the Middle East can spill into their own political debates at home. In the Middle East, the responses are layered. Egypt, which shares a border with Gaza, is alarmed. It has mediated countless ceasefires and knows that instability next door can threaten its fragile stability. Qatar, a key financial backer of Gaza, explanation, faces pressure to influence Hamas's decision. Iran predictably condemns the ultimatum, framing it as another example of Western aggression. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, engaged in cautious diplomacy with Israel, calculate how the crisis affects their regional strategies. On the global stage, the United Nations voices concern, warning of humanitarian consequences. Human rights organizations sound the alarm about the cost of escalation on civilians. The chorus of reactions reflects not just concern for Gaza, but also recognition that this ultimatum could redraw lines of confrontation far beyond its borders. Economics and strategic stakes beyond the politics lies the economy of conflict. Gaza's economy is already shattered. Years of blockade, war, and limited access to trade have left unemployment sky high and infrastructure fragile. For Hamas, rejecting the ultimatum could mean enduring even tighter restrictions, pushing ordinary people further into hardship. Yet, Hamas has often calculated that resistance, duress, strengthens its political narrative. Israel, by contrast, has a strong economy, but every escalation with Gaza carries costs. Rockets disrupt daily life, tourism suffers, investors grow wary. A prolonged conflict strains military resources and fuels political debates inside Israel itself. For the United States, the stakes are global credibility. An ultimatum is only as strong as the consequences that follow. If Hamas defies it and nothing happens, U.S. influence looks hollow. If America backs it with force, it risks deeper entanglement in a volatile region. Regional economies are also in the crosshairs. Depends on stability at its borders. Gulf states rely on global markets that react nervously to wars. Oil prices, shipping routes, and energy security all shift when missiles fly over the Middle East. Strategically, this is not just about Gaza. It is about signaling for Washington. The ultimatum says we still set the terms in the region. For Hamas, rejecting it says we will not bend. For Iran, the standoff is an opportunity to project defiance. For Israel, it is another chapter in a long struggle for security. Possible futures: the ultimatum sets up three broad futures, each with profound implications. Scenario 1, de-escalation. Hamas, under pressure from regional mediators and facing internal exhaustion, decides to soften its stance. It agrees to temporary concessions, perhaps pausing rocket attacks or opening channels for negotiation in this future. The ultimatum becomes a catalyst not for war, but for dialogue. While mistrust remains, the crisis cools and attention shifts to longer-term questions of governance, aid, and political compromise. The benefit: spared economies stabilized and time bought. The risk: fragile, calm, easily broken. Scenario 2, limited conflict. Hamas says no, but the response is measured. Israel, backed by American signals, launches targeted strikes against Hamas infrastructure. Hamas retaliates with rocket fire, but both sides avoid a full-scale war. The conflict lasts days or weeks, drawing in international mediation to secure another temporary ceasefire. Civilians suffer, infrastructure is damaged, but the violence stops short of total war. This scenario is familiar, a grim cycle repeated many times before. It stabilizes nothing but prevents collapse. Scenario 3, escalation. Hamas rejects the ultimatum outright and doubles down. Israel responds with overwhelming force, perhaps even ground operations. Hamas mobilizes and the conflict spills over. Hezbollah in Lebanon could join, opening a northern front. Iran could escalate its involvement, supplying weapons or orchestrating proxy strikes. The United States, having drawn the red line, is pulled deeper into the crisis. Global markets react, oil prices spike, and diplomatic channels are consumed by the conflict. This scenario is the nightmare of regional war sparked by a 3-day ultimatum. Explanation: each scenario is possible, each carries costs. The choice made in Gaza's narrow streets will echo in Washington, Tel Aviv, Tehran, and beyond. Tension peak and big question, and here lies the tension point. A 3-day ultimatum is not just a countdown, it is a spotlight. Every hour without resolution magnifies the stakes. The people of Gaza wait, the Israeli military calculates, the U.S. prepares its options, and regional actors brace for fallout. The big question then is not just what happens if Hamas says no, it is also what happens if the world has no plan for the answer. Deadlines in international politics are dangerous. They compress time, force choices, and leave little room for nuance. In the best case, they unlock breakthroughs. In the worst, they ignite wars. The world stands at the edge of both possibilities, waiting for a decision made by a movement that has never been known for compromise. The ultimatum is a reminder of how fragile peace can be and how easily one statement, one rejection, one no can tip the scales toward conflict. Gaza is more than headlines. It is a human reality, a nation shaped by decades of unresolved disputes, global rivalries, and the choices of leaders under pressure. As the clock winds down, explanation, the world must reckon with a sobering truth. Ultimatums create clarity, but they do not create solutions. So the question is whether this ultimatum will open the door to de-escalation or lock the region into another cycle of war. The answer for now lies in Gaza. If you found this breakdown insightful, make sure to stay tuned here at A Global Current Lens for more deep analysis of world events. Explanation. And don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think Hamas will do, and what should the global response be if they say no? Until next time, stay informed, stay critical, and keep your eyes on the currents shaping our world.